How to spot a narcissist before they dupe, hurt, and exploit you. Let's do it. Hi friends, welcome to my channel. If it's your first time here, my name is Tamie M. Joyce. I'm the founder of Tamie M Coaching, and I run a powerful 8-week transformational coaching program called the Freedom Class, specific to healing and recovery from codependency and narcissistic abuse. If you'd like to learn more about the possibility of becoming a coaching client, there's a link in the description below this video where you can apply to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation with either myself or a member of my team. So let's talk about how to spot a narcissist before they hurt and exploit you. You know, in my work, I deal with the aftermath of narcissistic abuse day in and day out. The absolute devastation and annihilation of not only my client's self-esteem, mental, emotional, psychological, and spiritual well-being, and sometimes even their financial well-being. And what I know for sure is this: if you can learn to spot the signs of a destructive narcissist personality pattern early on, you're going to be much more likely to be able to protect yourself and avoid all manner of unnecessary pain, drama, and trauma. Let's face it, life is difficult enough. We certainly don't need the extra that empathy-impaired emotional manipulators who feel entitled to hurt and exploit others bring to the table. Often just for kicks or some twisted form of ego gratification. These are not nice people, friends, no matter how hard they try to convince you that they are. So in my view, the first thing you want to do when it comes to spotting a narcissist before they do any damage is to step out of denial. And what I mean by that is, it's time now that we understand and accept that evil exists on this planet. And, like it or not, to a certain degree, has actually permeated the consciousness of the human race through all manner of brainwashing and manipulation, as well as generational trauma and other tactics perpetrated on the masses for millennia. Sound sinister? Sound negative? So be it. It's the truth. It's reality. And the sooner we get our head out of the sand, the sooner we can stop being hurt, harmed, and exploited by those who do not have your good heart nor your good intent. Here's the thing. False positivity, naivete, denial, and wishful thinking is what gets us into the mess of narcissistic abuse to begin with. Telling ourselves the truth about what we're dealing with, both individually and collectively, is a massively important first step to changing the game, healing for real, and stepping into true freedom and lasting peace. No matter how uncomfortable, no matter how inconvenient, no matter how unpopular, and no matter how painful, dropping the denial is necessary. Running from, denying, and hiding from the truth is not going to get you where you want to be. I can tell you in my own healing and recovery process, specifically with regard to being cast as the family scapegoat in a very sick, dysfunctional, and highly narcissistic family of origin, this was the key and most pivotal turning point for me, the cornerstone that was foundational in my ability to experience real healing, lasting peace, and absolute freedom. If you have a pattern of attracting one destructive narcissist after another, I promise you, your greatest weaknesses are your denial and naivete. A total lack of understanding as to who the enemy is and what their tactics are. And often, this manifests in all the ways in which we project our own virtue onto people who do not carry the same. Sometimes you need to stop seeing the good in people, or better yet, the good you're projecting onto them, and simply start seeing them for what they're showing you instead. And then tell yourself the dirt honest truth about what you see, feel, and hear, based on your personal experience of the situation. That will get you a whole lot further than denial and fake positivity ever will. Now, with all of that said, once you've stepped out of denial, here are 5 major red flags to be on the lookout for when it comes to spotting a narcissist before they hurt and exploit you. Number 1, being unkind to strangers. In other words, they lack empathy, and this is one of the ways it shows up in the early stages of getting to know them. They're being real nice to you, but not so nice to others, especially anyone they perceive to be beneath them. This should be obvious to you as they hold others in contempt and with unprovoked and unwarranted disdain. When you encounter anyone in any area of your life who is targeting either you or anyone else with unprovoked and unwarranted contempt and disdain, there's a surefire sign that you're dealing with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. Healthy people don't go around looking for reasons to target others. Healthy people don't need to prop themselves up with a false sense of superiority by looking down their nose at everyone else while judging and criticizing them, coming up with reasons as to why everyone is beneath them. So anyone who shows up in any area of your life targeting you or anyone else in front of you with contempt and disdain, beware. Chances are good you're dealing with someone with a destructive narcissist personality pattern to some degree, if not a large degree. And the truth is, if they demonstrate a lack of empathy for others, you'll inevitably be on the receiving end of the same. It's just a question of time. And a word of warning, do not be fooled by the narcissist and their ability to demonstrate what I call selective empathy. Like, for example, in the case of how they treat their scapegoated child as compared to their golden child or grandchild. Or how they behave toward the generally accepted family scapegoat in the larger dysfunctional family system as compared to how they behave toward their own children. Many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. The bottom line is, when you see a lack of genuine empathy or what would otherwise be natural, healthy remorse, that is a huge red flag. Do not make excuses for them and lie to yourself about that. Number two, they get defensive and attempt to gaslight you or attack you outright when you set a boundary. Usually a boundary you feel the need to set in the spirit of self-preservation and self-care. As I often say, if you want to know who and what you're dealing with, draw a line in the sand. Set a really clear boundary. Relatively healthy people will have no issue respecting your boundaries. Rather, they'll appreciate the clarity and they'll likely even demonstrate some level of empathy for your feelings around the need to set the boundary. Narcissists, on the other hand, will show you exactly who they are and what little respect they have for you, your comfort, and your feelings. When you dare set a boundary that pushes up against their own preferences or lack of fundamental decency and lack of boundaries of their own. Which brings me to my next point, red flag number 3. They aren't open to feedback. In fact, any perceived criticism will be enough to set them off. To say that they are hypersensitive to anything that might shine a light on a shortcoming, a flaw, or their inappropriate and unacceptable behavior is an understatement. Narcissists are very easily slighted, easily offended. In other words, they're so hypersensitive that without even realizing it, you can inflict narcissistic injury. If you have anyone in any area of your life who out of the blue, they're hurt, angry, and you have no idea why or what you've done, they are so easily offended, so easily slighted, always on the defensive, chances are good you're dealing with someone who at the very least has narcissistic traits, if not fully lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. We can be going through life, minding our own business, doing our own thing, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, it appears we've done or said something offensive. Although we have no ever-loving idea what that something might be. All we know is their facial expression has changed, their tone has changed, their body language has shifted, and the energy in the room has definitely shifted. And we can't for the life of us figure out why. And communicating with them gets us nowhere. And the reality is, it's not our stuff. As decent human beings with a kind heart, empathy, and a conscience, even if we accidentally step on someone's toes, hurt someone's feelings, we're going to acknowledge that right away. We're going to take ownership of that. We're going to apologize and do what we can do to make it right as quickly as possible. That's what decent, reasonably healthy human beings do, right? But the problem is when you're dealing with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, who is so hypersensitive, so easily offended, so easily slighted, those of us who are highly empathic individuals find ourselves in a situation where we don't even know what we did and we're feeling compelled to apologize and take responsibility for things that aren't our responsibility. The bottom line is, if you didn't do anything that you should be apologizing for on purpose or even by accident, you don't owe anybody an apology. It's vital that we recognize where we end and others begin. That's part of developing healthy boundaries. So if you encounter anyone in any area of your life whom you know is not at all open to feedback, or worse yet, is easily offended when you've done absolutely nothing to cause offense, recognize that's not your stuff. You only need to take responsibility for anything that you've actually done, intentionally or otherwise. Everything else, not yours to own. Don't take it on. Now comment below and let me know whether or not you're finding value in this video. Let me know in the comments section below. Also, if you'd like to learn more about the possibility of working with me in one of my coaching programs, there's a link in the description below where you can apply to see if you qualify for a free one-on-one consultation with either myself or a member of my team. This is for you if you're ready and able to invest in yourself and your healing and recovery journey. If you want the pain to stop, you want to find a way out of the fog, confusion, self-doubt, fear, and anxiety brought on by having been exposed to empathy-impaired emotional manipulators who feel entitled to hurt you, and worse yet, blame you for the hurt they cause. If that's you, the link is in the comments below. Red flag number 4, perception manipulation. If you encounter anyone in any area of your life who is working really hard to control or manipulate your perception, that is a huge red flag. They may be working to control your perception of them. They're working real hard. They're working overtime to convince you of what an amazing human being they are, how much they've done for their family, friends, humanity, whatever it may be. But the point being, it's very clear that they're working really, really hard to convince you, to sell you, to manipulate your perception and how you see them. They may also work really hard to manipulate and control your perception of others. Again, this is a huge red flag and telltale sign that you may be dealing with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. Reasonably, relatively healthy people have nothing to prove. They show up as who they are, take it or leave it. And they don't have to spend a lot of energy selling themselves, convincing you, attempting to manipulate and control your perception of them. And they certainly aren't in the business of manipulating and controlling your perception of anyone else. They've got better things to do with their energy and their time. So again, this is a huge red flag. Anyone who's trying to manipulate your perception of either themselves or anyone else, there's a good chance you're dealing with someone who at the very least has narcissistic traits, if not actually lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. And last but not least, red flag number 5. They trash talk their exes and anyone else who happens to not be in the room. And if you suspect you're dealing with someone with a destructive narcissistic personality pattern, pay close attention to what they say about their ex, because 2 things are true here. It's likely a full confession of what they, in fact, did to their ex, and you're next, given the chance. In fact, in any area of your life, when you encounter someone whose modus operandi is to speak negatively about, criticize, condemn, diminish, demean, or disclose deeply personal details about another, details that any decent human being would never say out loud, know this. When they're doing that to whoever happens to be absent at the time, and they show you more than once that this is who they are, you, my friend, are dealing with a narcissist. Narcissists are toxic gossips. They're always looking for the person to speak negatively about, typically very much behind their backs, smiling to their face while stabbing them in the back the moment they're out of earshot or out of the room. Healthy people don't behave this way. You fully have to be lacking in empathy and lacking in conscience to go through life conducting yourself in this fashion. You really do. And look, we're all human. A very rare few of us can say we've never indulged in some harmless gossip. But if you know that you have developed somewhere along the way a bad habit of gossiping in a negative fashion about others, you might want to check yourself. You might want to listen to that feeling you get in your gut. I know if I catch myself in that kind of behavior, which again, we've all been guilty of at one time or another, especially if we're feeling any sort of frustration or disappointment or whatever it might be, right? I know I feel guilty. I feel the pang in the moment. Why? Because I have empathy, I have a conscience. And as a decent human being with a heart full of love and good intent, I choose to hold myself to a higher standard. And when I slip, my body tells me. But when we're talking about people who land on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, they don't hold themselves to that higher standard. They don't get the guilt, the shame feelings when they're not living up to their own higher standard for themselves. This is how they go through life, perpetually looking for opportunities to put others down so that they can feel okay about themselves in the moment. And they do this through toxic gossip. And I'd go as far as to say, often they're fully addicted to being toxic gossips. They're gossip addicts. And I'll tell you something, in my own experience, men are as guilty, if not more so, of this than women. In my previous career, I worked in an environment surrounded by men, great men to a large degree, but many of them were full-blown gossip addicts. And those that were full-blown gossip addicts were also folks who I would say land on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. It kind of goes hand in hand, it seems. It's one of the ways that a narcissist will try to compensate for their absolute runaway low self-esteem and bolster their false sense of superiority. It may not be obvious that they have absolute runaway low self-esteem under the surface because often they're quite grandiose. Not always, but often enough, they're so adept at projecting this image that would suggest the opposite. But make no mistake, anyone who has a habit of gossiping in a toxic, destructive, negative fashion about others is someone who is fully lacking in empathy and conscience and therefore likely lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. Again, no excuses. See it for what it is and tell yourself the dirt honest truth about what you see, feel, and hear. And with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. But don't stop now. I have well over 100 more videos right here on YouTube for you to watch to help you better understand the detrimental effects of narcissistic abuse and, more importantly, learn what you need to do now to heal from the abuse so you can start living your best life in peace, confidence, freedom, and abundance. And if you want to go deeper with me, go to TamieMCoaching.com and learn about my unique tried and true process garnered over decades of experience and learn how you can become my client.